Hello and welcome to the Mindful Men podcast, a show helping men to open up about manhood. My name is Simon Rennie and my aim is to get men talking. From mental health to fatherhood and everything in between, Mindful Men creates a safe space for conversation. Now, before we get into this episode, I want to say a huge thank you for joining me. It means a world for you to join me and talk about men's issues. And if you love what you hear, please subscribe and share the episode with your mates. You can also join the conversation on Instagram and YouTube, and I'd love to connect with you there. But for now, sit back, relax, and let's get mindful. G'day guys, and welcome to another episode of the Mindful Men podcast. My name is Simon Rennie, and I'm the man behind Mindful Men. I'm super excited today. I've got Lachie Stuart, who's a men's high performance coach, the guy behind the Man That Can project, and he's just down the Bruce Highway in Brisbane. How are you going, Lachie?
Mate, I'm going really well. Thanks so much for having me on. It's very, very exciting to be on here, and I just wanted to acknowledge you for all the work that you're doing, mate. I was listening to the podcast during the week. I've had plenty of time on the road to listen to it, so it's cool to see what you're up to as well.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. I really do appreciate that. And I've been following you for a little while on Insta, or quite a while on Insta. And one of the things I love about what you're doing in the social media space and on your podcast is promoting a way for men to be the best versions of themselves, but also without being a dick about it. You know, when we look at men and men's programs, there's a lot of hyper masculinity in the world. It's a lot of, you must do this, or you're a soft cock or whatever. But I love the approach that you take. It's just real. It's raw, but it's not so in your face that you get turned off of it straight away. And that's something that I really admire. And I see it in the guys that I follow on Insta and so forth. So thank you for doing the work that you're doing, and we'll explore a bit about that today.
I appreciate that, mate, and it's good to get that feedback, because I definitely know. I always think back to when I needed, I guess, personal development or men's groups and just a way to figure out who I was and what I wanted. And I think about what I would have really gravitated to. And there's, I guess, approaches out there that, as you sort of said, can turn you completely away from it. And that's never the intention. My goal is to obviously get as many men to work out what they want from their life and how they can go about getting that without really sacrificing essentially who they are or what they're sort of attached to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll explore that today, and we'll get into it. But before we start, I'd like to hear a bit about your backstory and how you came to be where you are today and in doing the work that you're doing, and maybe some of the things that have driven you along the way.
Awesome. I'll give a really short overview. I grew up like a lot of Australian blokes, or especially where I grew up. I grew up wanting to be a professional footy player, and I know you're an AFL supporter and an Adelaide Crow supporter. I'm a Geelong supporter, but I also come from rugby league and rugby union, so that was always the goal. And from a young age, I was very fortunate. At 10 years old, showed promise in athletics and made a state team, won a state title. And from that age, my parents started investing in coaching for me to, I guess, pursue that. And as a result of that, I got to hang around a lot of high performers and understand coaching from a young age. So it really helped me excel in other sports as well. And there was never really any other option from that. I loved sport. I loved being outdoors. And very quickly, my identity became being that good athlete, which is a good thing and also can be a detrimental thing, as we find out along the way. So I got a scholarship to a rugby school, and that was for running. So it was a good cross-country runner, good 800-meter runner, good 400-meter runner. And you sort of get to grade 9, so 14 years of age, where you start getting picked on because I was super skinny. And obviously being at a rugby school, if I wasn't fitting in with the jocks, then who do you really fit in with? So my goal became to get really strong and be a good football player so that I could fit in and obviously, play first 15 and all of that sort of stuff. And that's what I became committed to. And I developed a bit of a bad attitude towards athletics and running along the way, because I didn't want that interfering in my goal of being popular and my goal of playing first 15. Now, I achieved all of that sort of stuff, which was awesome. Played rugby after that, went overseas to France to play rugby. And the whole time and looking back at it with a set of, I guess, the perspective that I have now, I was ticking off all of these things that I thought I wanted. I was ticking off the professional sport. I was ticking off being popular. I was ticking off getting, I guess, to have a good looking girlfriend and all of those sorts of things, but I was still severely unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until 2014 when I moved back from France playing rugby that I was like, I've lived on the Gold Coast, I've lived in France, I've gone back home, and I got to do all of these amazing things, but I was still severely unhappy. Why could that be? And it's a big question for people who don't really have the answers, but also the support networks to work that out. So I did what I feel a lot of men do and I avoided that question. I used alcohol, pornography, recreational drug use to sort of numb the feelings that came around that until I sort of hit my rock bottom point. And when you get to rock bottom, and it's different for everyone, you've got two options. You sit there or you start climbing back out. And I think because I'd had the successes in the lead up to that point, I believed deeply within myself that I was born for more than what I was achieving and how I was acting. And it's almost as if in 2 weeks that everything started to fall into place. A mate that I played rugby with when I went back home, and I had a lot of respect for, he gave me a book, and the book was the 4 Agreements, which sits on my bookshelf here. And I was like, I've never really read a book unless it was like a free ride, a motocross magazine or a skateboard magazine. I was like, I'm going to read it. And I read it and it was really boring, but I felt so empowered when I finished it. When I finished it, 1, I'd read my first, I guess, self-help book, but 2, it started challenging the way I thought about myself, and it started highlighting a few areas that I could improve on. So I became hungry again to work out what else can I fix within myself.
Yeah.
And that really started the journey of the Man That Can project. And that was back in 2014, because from then, obviously Instagram on these beautiful phones was taking off. So I started writing posts and I started doing videos and all of that sort of stuff. And as a result of that, I got better at writing, I got better at speaking, and it developed this whole new identity for myself. Someone that I was really proud of, was really confident, and was putting in the work for myself, but it was also empowering a lot of other people. And obviously my focus for men along the way. And that sort of snowballed into starting the Man That Can project, because there's never been a day in my life where I once said, I can't wait to be an awesome coach. Like, that was never on my, I always looked at coaches and personal trainers and stuff as people who couldn't get a real job, even though my backup job from footy was personal training. I did my personal training because I think at that point I missed what they were actually providing to people, the help that they were providing. I was just like, oh, it's superficial personal training or coaching. It's like, sort your own shit out. But now I can see how much myself included, we need perspectives and opinions and guidance from other people. And I can see how much it can positively impact people's lives. So I'm grateful to be a part of that. And fast forward to 2017, I think it was, or just back end of 2016, I was getting messages from people, oh, can you help me? And I was like, nah, no chance. Just listen, watch the videos, or do this and do that. And eventually I was in Austria on a holiday, and I got a message from a gentleman, and I can't remember specifically what it said, but that was the thing where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to start a men's group. So when I get back, I'm going to give everyone, or try and create this environment that I wish I had, where I could talk to men from all walks of life who were successful, parents who were successful in business, who had great health, who had incredible lifestyles, who understood money, who understood their emotions. And I wanted to put them in a room and be able to just seek the knowledge, understand the sacrifices, the choices, the adversity that they had overcome, the emotional challenges that they dealt with in that space. And I wanted them to be honest. And that's essentially where it started. And as a result of that, it's always been like, okay, that's highly successful and that's really working, because we've got sold out events, not in stop. What's the next thing that we can do to help men progress in their life to be the better version of themselves? And that sort of led us to where we are today.
Awesome. One of the words that come out that really sung out for me in that story of yours is confidence. And you talked about at school and trying to fit in, if you're not fitting in with the jocks, who are you fitting in with? And what was your confidence like back then? Obviously you're really good at sport, but like, what was your confidence like in your school days?
Yeah, my confidence was, I think in certain areas within sport, I always had an innate ability to know that whatever I did, I would be successful because I'd proven that to myself. And I think in various other areas, I guess it was more probably linked to self-esteem. I didn't value myself around other people. I was very quiet. There was a moment that I probably didn't share in the intro that really stands out to me. When I was, it was just before I hit high school. I still remember these two girls coming up to me at school, and they're like, one of the girls was like, "Lachie, just speak, say something." And I was like, "This is really odd." So I just sat there for a moment. And then eventually I said something, and they laughed at me and said, "Look, listen how high his voice is."
Yeah.
And obviously my balls hadn't dropped then, right? So that's a normal thing. But I was so self-conscious as a result of that. And I feel like that was one of those moments in my life where I was like, well, I'm not going to speak unless spoken to, or unless I feel like I have a lot of value to add. And I think that I was always the quiet one within our social circles. And and even to this day, I guess I'm more about letting my actions, speak more than my words. So there's definitely a lot of, and even to this day, to be honest, I still wake up most days with insecurities, feeling, with social media, especially, like sometimes I'm not doing enough or I'm not good enough. But I think if I can bring it back to myself, and I wish I had the tools and strategies back then, it would have helped me not become dependent on alcohol. I would have probably stuck with running instead of going over to rugby, because I still, I'm back running now competitively. And it definitely would have helped with how I showed up in relationships and how I treated other people, because a lot of the time the actions or the decisions that I was making was based out of insecurity and trying to prove other people that I was worthy and I was good at things, when really I just needed to look at myself. And I see that happening for blokes all the time. They call it the big dick syndrome, or, the ego, or whatever it may be. But we're just trying to prove ourselves to other people. And it's a zero-sum game, right? Like, I could work really hard. I'm a pretty basic person in regards to possessions and all that sort of stuff. I don't need much. But if you spend a lot of your life, like I did at a younger age, where I was striving for fame and being the best footballer and stuff like that, there's always going to be someone who's better. There's always going to be someone who's faster, stronger, can score more tries. So if that were going to continue to be how I valued myself, and I guess the value that I gave myself, I would have been in strife. And a lot of people are living like that, unfortunately. So I'm very lucky that I had all of those moments, the highs, the lows, and everything in between, that helped me realize that from a young age, because I started figuring that out at 24, which in my eyes, that's extremely young to realize that your self-worth's not attached to all these external things. So yeah, to answer your question, my confidence at a young age in some fields was incredible, but my self-worth and how the value that I gave myself was not very good.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head there. That's something that a lot of guys out there, myself included, having lived with depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder for 30 odd years, we carry that from a young age, and we don't deal with it until we're at the point where I think in our minds that we can start to look at the world in a bit of a different perspective, and on our self-worth and where we sit in the world as well. And it's not until we get to that moment that we go, hey, I need some help. Whether it's a high performance men's coach, whether it's psychologist, counselor, social worker, or whatever it is, going to do study and changing careers or whatever, because these things, I think, they plant seeds when we're young, and us guys, we hold on to it for a very long time before we actually start dealing with it. And I liked how you picked up that book. And reading is quite boring for a lot of guys, but once you get through that, you have this slightly new perspective about life. It's the same with podcasts. It's the same with documentaries, whatever you read or watch or anything like that. And so all around that good consumption of information, I think that sparks something and goes, okay, that might have not been the best book or the best documentary, but something's got there. And then you go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And here you are now supporting blokes all over the world through the work that you're doing. So it's great that you can talk about it, because not many blokes can talk about it.
Yeah. And you're definitely right. Like, we're always looking for, well, I think we should always be looking for those 1%ers, right? From a book, from a podcast, even from a conversation. Like, I'll get off this podcast here, Simon, and I'll have a whole new perspective on different things just from the conversation that we've had. And I feel one area that a lot of us can definitely improve on, even if we're not looking to read books or listen to audio books, is just give yourself 5 to 10 minutes a day to reflect on your day. What's one thing that you did well?
Yeah.
Right. Pull that out of your day. And what specifically did you enjoy about that? Why did you feel that went well for you? What didn't you enjoy about a certain event? Because what you're now starting to do is improve your self-awareness.
Yeah.
The more aware you can become about things in your life, the better decisions you're going to be able to make moving forward. Okay. Because, we spend the first 12, 18 years of our life at school, right? We're learning how to talk. We're learning how to write. We're learning all these other things. And some of them are beneficial for where you want to go in life. And majority of them, maybe not so much, depending on obviously what you're aspiring to achieve. But the things that we don't learn is about ourselves.
Yeah.
Why is this kid upset? He may have got kicked in the shins, but how is he feeling about that? Yes, it's painful, but does he feel lonely? Does he feel isolated? We don't ever have these conversations. So then when we start experiencing that in life, and I think school as well, we're not even school, just from the younger years, we're definitely protected, right? I don't have children yet, but you're a father. You would not like seeing your children upset, right? You do whatever you can to make them feel better.
Yeah.
But the reality is life isn't like that. I'm not saying go out there and don't make your children feel better, because I'll definitely be trying to make my children feel better. But I'll be having conversations when the time comes, right, to explore, to understand the way they perceive events or how I perceived it. Because when we go out into the big bad world, here I am saying it's bad, but real life, stuff doesn't always go to plan, and we don't know how to seek to understand people's opinions or ways of interpreting things, which is why we really struggle.
Definitely.
And if we can start to go, look, not everything out there is personal. Some of it's, people are driven by money. Some people are driven by status. Some people are driven by, a various range of things, which doesn't have anything to do with me. I may just be in the way of their progress, which is why they walk out, So I think it's very important to start talking about and having group conversations. Like, people who are listening to this right now may have something they'd love to chime in. I wish they could do that. And when podcasts get to that point, that'll be pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Because the conversations will challenge everyone's opinions and everyone's perspectives, because none of us are right. We're all just speaking from our own belief systems. But if we don't ever facilitate the space, which is once again why the men's group worked really well for us in the beginning, because even what you say, Simon, you may say things that just have these light bulb effect in my mind. I go, wow, never thought of that before, or never saw that way. And that's just changed the game for me.
Definitely. And I've got a podcast coming out on Monday with my son. He's 5, Gus. From that perspective, so I was having a chat with Anthony Simons, who he's a social worker in Adelaide. We had a few podcasts ago where he does exercise-based therapy, and we're talking about just being dads and walking at the speed of our kids. So when they're particularly young as well, they walk at a very slow pace, and we're used to going 1,000 miles an hour. So I thought, Gus has been keen to come on the podcast. He wants to be a YouTube star, but it was cool to just to sit there and have a chat with him and talk about things from a 5-year-old's perspective. Because it opens up as a grown up, our eyes to the way that our kids see the world as well. So we obviously have our own lens and our own belief systems and values and our experiences of the world. But a 5-year-old is very different to a 38-year-old. So I love how you put that point there. Different perspectives in different contexts can certainly put on those light bulb moments. Yeah,
mate, I think it's great that you had your Gus on the podcast, because I don't remember what I was thinking when I was 5. But you watch children, as you said, they walk a little bit slower. They're curious about everything, whereas we're in our routine and we just go. Yeah. We see so many videos on YouTube now of like elderly people in their deathbed giving advice, and it's like, oh, I want to make sure I don't take that for granted. But it's like, well, what about the children?
Yeah.
How often do we look through their eyes with they don't care about anything. They're not worried about judgment, stress, all of these things that we're carrying through our life.
Yeah.
We should be learning a lot from children as well.
And you said something earlier around trying to be the kind of person that you needed back when you were a bit younger, which is something that I come across quite frequently in guys that are working in this kind of space, myself included. Is the content that I'm putting out there is trying to be the content that I needed when I was in my teenage years, or when I was in my early 20s, even into my early 30s, even today, that I need today, because the support networks aren't around that well for men, and men struggle to find the support networks, particularly in a day and age where we move around so much. Like, you've been around the world, and I've lived in, I think, 4 different Australian states and territories. So before we get into the Man That Can project, you mentioned that you're doing 30 marathons in 30 days. I'm The first question I asked myself when you told me that was, why?
Yeah.
And I know you're a bit
Yeah.
sore today. So like, yeah, tell us before we get into the Man That Can project and Strong Mountain Valley, because I'm really keen to hear about that in particular. Tell us why you're doing 30 marathons in 30 days.
The main reason was every year I find a way to challenge myself physically. Ever since I retired from football, I've still got that desire to see what I can get out of myself. So previous years we've done 12-hour walks, 12-hour CrossFit challenges, 12-hour triathlons, just always 12 hours. And I saw a bloke did 30 marathons in 30 days running. And I was like, well, if I do that, that's going to really bugger up my joints before track season starts again. So the next best thing, and the thing that I dislike most, is the rower.
Yes.
So I thought, if I can do 30 marathons, that's going to put me in the pain cave mentally, because you're staring at a screen for 3 hours 15. And my goal then for the community, I was like, let's get the community involved and see how many people can push themselves to be that little bit better. Because I feel we're in many people, not everyone, but many people are in a comfortable place in their life where they don't challenge themselves. And I think if you can do that in a controlled way, like obviously sitting on a row is controlled, you have the ability to tap out and go, look, I'm done, too much pain, boring, whatever it is. But in life, we get challenged with adversity or obstacles every single day. And sometimes you can't tap out of that.
Yeah.
But you have to deal with it. So if you can continue to push what you're capable of, it's a transferable skill. Right? It's a transferable experience, because what I've learned, and we've had 13 people complete a marathon now, and so I'm on day 9 today. So 13 people complete a marathon, plus we're up to 14 other people who've beaten their max distances rowed on a rowing machine before.
Yeah.
And people are experiencing more confidence. Obviously, learning how to look at a problem subjectively. So understand they need a support system. They need to prepare well. So, you need to rock up with your waters, your gels, your food, towels, all that sort of stuff to work well. And you also need self-talk to get through. All things that are important for overcoming adversity in other areas of your life.
Yeah.
Okay. So next time these guys face adversity in another area of their life, they're going to go, well, what support do I have around myself? How am I speaking to myself? What's the plan to get through this? Whereas some people will just get thrown in the adversity space and have no idea what they need. So I think that message and getting that across is insane. So it'll be awesome to see over the next, what have we got, 22 days left, including today, how many more people break those milestones for themselves. And also for myself, it's what am I capable of now? I'm in a very interesting position where my glute and my ass is hurting more than I was expecting. But I knew when I was going into it, I was like, I want to suffer. I really want to feel that pain where I want to tap out. But I wasn't expecting it to come in this form. I was expecting it to come in, maybe I was hoping something that I'd felt before, a pain that I'd felt before. So I knew I could get through it. I haven't experienced this pain before. So it's completely new. So even looking into that, I'm like, man, I was just trying to choose a challenge that I knew I could get through with the pain. Now it's something different. So it is what it is. So that's where we are. The reason why was to challenge myself and to inspire our community to pursue more from themselves, which is exactly what's happening.
Yeah, the key word there for me is resilience. And you talk about it, I think, from the adversity perspective. And whenever I bring this up with people, I've done a bit of clinical social work in my degree. And when I bring this up, a lot of guys like, I'm not resilient. I don't even really know what that word is. And it's exactly what you're saying. They get thrown into this adversity or trauma or situation they don't know how to get out of. But in reality, they've got out of every other adversity in their life in some way, whether or not it's in a really healthy way or if it's not a healthy way, but they've got through. Whether it's a relationship breakup, it's running a marathon and wanting to give up halfway through, or if it's failing school or losing a job, they've somehow woke up the next day and got going again, but they might not recognize it as being resilient. They might just see it as a day-to-day life. But I love how you're using this as it's recognizing resilience, it's building resilience in a new way, in a way that you haven't experienced before, but it's also teaching things around support systems, around resources that you need, like the towels, the gels, and all that type of stuff. Because when we can conceptualize an issue or adversity in this way, we can get through anything. And as you said, it's transferable mindsets, transferable to other parts of our life. Parenting, when you're in the midst of the baby years, when you're sleep deprived and You can't communicate with your baby because they obviously don't talk, so you don't know what's wrong with them when they've been crying for 4 hours on end. It's all these things are resilience building and strengths building, and it comes back to values, which we'll get to in a minute as well. So it's a great initiative, and I saw you doing it, and I thought I'm going to go for a run. So I went for a run because I'm coming out of the COVID years, and when COVID hit, I stopped going to the gym, experienced some mental illness issues, but now that things are opening up again, I've tried out the gym again, but I've been back into my running recently as well. And I saw your thing. So even though I'm not doing the 30-day marathons, I've, grabbed my runners and off I went around the park.
That's awesome.
So
I think the key thing there is you're being proactive as well, right? It's very easy to watch things and get inspired, which a lot of us do, right? We watch, things on YouTube or listen to podcasts. We're like, yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to earn money, change my health, but then we don't do it. Yeah. So the fact that you're being proactive is incredible. And I think that's the most, you just take action. And just to sort of touch on what you were saying there as well around the resilience piece, it's all relative, right? It's all contextual for us as individual. People may look at what I'm doing and go, man, that's tough. And I'm like, well, it's no different to the person who's just broken their 10, who's just hit their first hour on the rower because they made their limit or their threshold before may have been 15 minutes. Yeah. Right. So it's still the exact same experience. You're going to have the same thoughts that I'm having over 30 days because, my background is extremely, I normally train for 2 to 3 hours a day anyway. So it's no different. And this is where, when we look at resilience, it's got to be relevant and relatable to where you are as an individual. Okay. So if you put it in the context of you're wanting to have a tough conversation with your partner, right? Some people do that easy because their communication in their relationship's been firing for years. Some people have not ideal communication in their relationship. So the resilience it takes to sit there and listen and understand and work through that is 10 times what I've given it, just based on where it's at. So I think it's really important to, I guess, have your own standards around what you're measuring and go, look, can I just get a little bit more? Can I listen a little bit longer this time? And just do that day in, day out. And that's how you're going to, it's your threshold. Just keep tapping on the threshold and working through that. Yeah, definitely. And I noticed you've been doing a bit more on relationships lately on your socials, which is fantastic because it's not something that guys openly talk about. What's prompting you to get into this kind of discussion at the moment? It's interesting. There's so many, last year, it's crazy to say last year already, how quickly this year's going. Yeah. Last year, there was a number of men within our community who went through divorces and relationship breakdowns. And, we often have the conversation within our academy, but more so on social media, I think, I don't know. There's no reason behind why I'm doing it. It's, I try to keep my wife and our relationship, we speak openly. She's got her own thing going on. Mm-hmm. But I feel if I have a conversation with a client, I'm like, well, let's talk about that because, when you look at the reasons why men are taking their life by their own hands, relationship breakdowns in the top 3. Yeah. So if we aren't having conversations around that, and whether you're in a relationship or not, it doesn't matter. It's still a skill set that you need to develop. It's still building self-awareness, it's still building confidence and self-worth as an individual, because then you don't have dependency issues, insecurities. And, I'm not saying you're ever going to rid those because I still experience them, but you can understand them and manage them a lot better. So I think it's important to talk about that. And I was only saying to a bloke yesterday, like, I'm so fortunate to have the wife that, like, our relationship's incredible. And I'm not saying we're perfect, but, we don't fight. We communicate strongly. Like, we very, communicate well. And we understand, if I'm, I was talking about this on a podcast the other day, throughout this 30 days, my wife's the one making the sacrifice. She's the one who has to understand I'm going to be cranky. And we've spoken about all the things that I thought were going to happen. I'm going to be cranky. I'm going to need to eat a lot. I'm going to bed at 7 p.m. I won't be able to go out socializing. None of this is happening. That's a choice I've made, but that's a sacrifice she's committed to as well. Yeah. So over the next 30 days, people go, oh, you're an awesome. I'm like, I'm not fucking awesome. I chose to do this. I put myself in the situation. My wife's the awesome one. The people around me, my clients, my friends, they're the awesome ones because they're sacrificing me being my happiest and most energetic self so I can achieve the goal that I'm working towards. Yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, why I'm talking more about relationship stuff, I think it's just what's on my mind at the moment, maybe because I don't want, I want more people to experience what I've got within a relationship. I want them to be able to know that, the grass isn't always greener. You don't necessarily need a new partner. You maybe just need to develop self-worth, self-confidence, better communication, all the stuff that you already have within you. You just maybe, you don't know how to articulate yourself, and there's a whole lot of stuff to work on, because I was terrible. And going back to the beginning, things that helped me fast track this was like when I was writing all my posts back in the day on Instagram, I would send every post to my wife and go, hey, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
And she would just completely rewrite my post, because I was, I hadn't spent much time writing. So through that process, I started learning how to write. And then through doing video and podcasts, I started learning how to articulate myself better, how to listen more, how to ask better questions, which has helped my relationship.
Mm.
And as a result of that, I'm not as insecure. I'm not as jealous. I'm not as, I don't flick the switch and just argue anymore. I can really work through things. And I think that's changed the game for my wife. Because before that, if you'd met me 8 years ago, when Amy first met me, I was a tough person to deal with. A really tough person to deal with. So I think, there's no specific reason why. I just think it's on my mind.
I really liked it because it's one for your intimate relationships, but then it's also relationships at work. It could be relationships with your mates, your relationships with kids, and so forth, because you're able to step back and start to see different perspectives. So the fact that you're championing it at the moment, even though maybe subconsciously you're supporting us to see, okay, maybe I just need to stay back, maybe hold my breath before I respond, maybe do a bit of inner reflection on what's driving my responses as well. So that comes back to that values stuff as well, is what's driving me to get angry straight away, or driving me to not listen, or driving me to respond in the ways that we're responding. So no, I just love seeing what you're doing.
I think it really drives just back to that whole responsibility, like taking responsibility for everything. If you want to be fit and healthy, you're the only one who can do that. And if you can't afford a personal trainer, or you can't afford a nutritionist, the next thing you can do is you can start learning about fitness. You can start learning about health. If your relationship sucks, do something about it. What do you need to improve? Is it read some books to understand maybe what's not working well for you? It might be communication. It might be listening. It might be anger management. It might be emotional intelligence. We've got to take responsibility and start piecing it together for ourselves. Otherwise, we're always going to be at the effect of the things outside of ourselves, and we don't have control over that. We have only got control over how we choose to show up, how we choose to respond.
Definitely. I'd love to now step into the Man That Can project and how it came about and what it aims to achieve, and particularly why you think men need support, particularly to grow. And we've talked a bit about this already, but just to recap on the Man That Can project. Yeah, can you tell us about it?
For sure. So as I was saying at the beginning, like it did start from that moment of it came out of my own growth and my own experience, and just sharing that on social platforms, and just being excited by the fact that I was growing and changing, because for a long period of my life, I didn't think it was possible. I started to accept that I was, did have these bad behaviors and bad traits. I was using drugs. I was drinking a lot of alcohol. I was lying, manipulating, and cheating. And a lot of people around me were doing very similar things. So I started to go, maybe this is actually who I am. And I started to accept that for a while. And I always wondered, like, how come this person, can be successful and have an awesome relationship, but I can't? What am I missing?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I hit that rock bottom that I was like, I just need to find answers. It wasn't even the rock bottom moment. It was when I got that book. I was like, well, if I can learn something from that, then I can definitely learn something from those people. And without even thinking about it, in Austria, when and if you go back to the Man That Can project on Instagram back to 2017, you'll see the video. I'm walking the streets on my way to get a beer and a palmy in Austria. And I'm like, when I get back, we're doing a men's group. So what that's going to look like is you're going to come in, and I prepped this 4-page document. I was going to share my story and do all this sort of stuff. But when we got into the room, I was like, let's just go around a circle and talk. Like, what brought you here tonight? What's working well for you? What challenges do you have? And let blokes just actually interact.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've lost this ability. You mentioned before, why do men need support? Men support each other, just not in all facets of their life. if one of your mates is going on to play for the Brisbane Broncos or the Queensland Reds or the Adelaide Crows for you, so we get behind them. We're like, fuck yeah, this is unreal.
Yeah.
And we'll do everything to support them. But when your mate's having a challenge in their relationship, you probably don't even hear about it until they get in a divorce or splitting up. But two, if it does come up, what advice are you going to say? Oh, mate, what about bloody that Sheila over there? Go muck around with her for a bit and you'll feel better.
Yeah.
So we don't have the skills to be able to navigate that conversation. It's very uncomfortable, or we just don't have the conversation altogether. So men are supporting each other. But if we can just learn, once again, that transferable skill, how to do that in other areas of our life. So one, how do we articulate ourselves when we're going through those challenges? How would I bring it up with my mate that I'm struggling financially? My ego's in the way. I'm worried about appearing as a failure. I'm worried about asking for help. Two, my mate on the other side, what's he going to say? She'd be right, mate. Come on, mate, just work a few more hours or do whatever. It's like, we don't know how to have those conversations. So what I've noticed and what we started seeing literally at our men's circles in the beginning, we had 18-year-old guys who were working at Domino's, and we had 55-year-old guys who were partners in law firms coming along.
Yeah.
The group was so diverse and everyone was walking away energized, empowered, because you were getting to offload, right, from various areas of your life, relationship, finances, feeling overweight, depression, anxiety, all of these things. And then there were other men who were going, hey, I've been through that. This is not advice, but this is what I did. This is what I help I sought. This is, why I prioritize these things. And these men just kept coming back, and they built friendships with people that they probably would have never associated with in their life.
Yeah.
And I started going, well, that was pretty simple. It's communication. It's a transferable skill.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we then get this out to more people? Because there's stigma around it, right? There's stigma attached around a men's group. Why are men going to sit in a circle and talk? That's a bit soft, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I don't consider, I'm a fucking footy player. I love talking about sport, but I also want to have these conversations. I think they're extremely important. They're saving men's life. They're helping men feel better about themselves. So how do I get blokes who are exactly like I was? I came from a blue collar rugby sort of background, generally perceived to be a bit tougher or harder in the Australian society. I was like, well, how can I get these blokes coming along to it? Because if I can get them, we're going to get every bloke coming along.
Yeah.
Right. Because generally at school, the footy ones are the ones who, and this might have changed since I've left school, but they were the top dogs at school.
Yeah.
If we can get them being more emotionally intelligent, if we can get them being more accepting and understanding, then communities are going to thrive. So then we started running workshops. And, once again, we had men from all walks of life coming to these workshops and getting to integrate, getting to go through experiences, crying together, laughing together, exercising together. And it just built this community. And then I was like, all right, we're getting full here. What's the next step? And one thing that I noticed was this: when men came into these immersive experiences, whether it was men's circle, whether it was a 3-day workshop, unfortunately, most men went back to the same environments that they came from.
Yeah.
So while they may have got excited about life, why they may have started believing in themselves more, why they may have been pumped to improve their relationship with their partner, when they get around the same people, they started going back to previous conditioning, which then took them back to feeling the same way they were previously. Yeah. And I wanted sustainable change. And then I started thinking, okay, well, what helped me create sustainable change? I moved towns completely and just started a whole new social circle. Most people are not going to do that. So if we can provide a way for people to connect, regularly, then that's going to be, and that's what really created the Strong Men of Value Academy, which is the academy that we run online. We still have in-person meetups, workshops, all that, but the blokes literally talk all day, every day on their phones. And then we do weekly calls. So they're still getting to be integrated with the lifestyle that they came from, because, I still hang out with my mates that I grew up with.
Yeah.
It's just how much time do I spend with them and what advice do I seek from them, or what do I share with them? And then I've got other mates that, I share different things with, or I seek different bits of advice from. And it's built a thriving community. And once again, I've managed to get the blokes who are exactly like I was. And one thing that you said at the start of this conversation, which was, how do we get men to know they can be better without having a stigma around it or a weird approach around it. And that's why we focus so much on the fitness aspect, because one, I love fitness. I live and breathe fitness. But two, even from this rowing challenge, I've got CEOs of electrical company, a lot of blue collar people that never would have had a way to have a conversation to me without being, that little bit of stigma around it. Because don't get me wrong, the Man That Can projects, some people still have a stigma around, if I'm a part of that, people are going to think I've got, issues. I'm like, we've all got fucking issues, one, but two, we're focused on performance, right? And performance for me is I still struggle with depression. I still struggle with anxiousness. I still struggle with low self-esteem, all of that. But if I'm focusing on the things that are going to help me move through that I know that help me personally move through that, I'm going to be in a much better headspace majority of the time. Not always, but majority of the time. And all of us as blokes can do that. And we need to start looking at our lives as holistic. You can go to the top of your field, whether it's in career, sport, you can have the world's best relationship. But if other areas of your life are dragging, they'll catch up with you. Guarantee it.
Yeah.
And definitely. And does that answer your question? I went on a bit of a tangent. And
it brought up communication for me. So you had the 18-year-old and the 56-year-old or whoever. And in the podcast I did last week on growing up playing footy. So I grew up playing AFL. I did athletics. I did basketball. I did a bit of soccer as well. I was the fastest kid in school. So you get that kind of street cred just from that. But internally, I was petrified of a lot of people. I was really socially anxious, almost paranoid throughout whole of school. And I played footy, and I was pretty good at footy without trying to ring my own bell or anything like that. I was really fast. I wasn't the guy that would be in the middle of the pack. I'd be the outlying player, and won premierships, won a few best and fairest, and so forth. But when you're growing up in that age, and this was in like the 90s up until the early 2000s, and I grew up in northern suburbs of Adelaide, so that's working class as well. That's where they built Holdens, for example, and most people would finish school and go work at Holdens and build cars until that closed down. But it's around blokes don't cry, or boys don't cry, boys don't show emotion, and we're trained that way. We were, particularly back then, and I didn't have a relationship with my dad. My dad, we wouldn't talk about emotions, and it would be around if you were crying or if you got in trouble and you were upset, it would be just like suck it up, grow some balls, or drink some concrete, harden up, and all that type of stuff. And I always come back to this story of in primary school, my mate, one of my best mates, he was crying. I said, "What are you crying for?" And he's like, he's upset about something. I said, "Mate, boys don't cry." And he looked me in the eye and he said, "I can cry if I want to." And from that moment, I'm like, everything I'd learned about being a boy, I started to question that from him saying that I can cry. I'm allowed to cry. Because I was taught that if I started to tear up, I've got to suck it in and try and wipe it away. And then if I do cry, it's in isolation away from the rest of the world. But by bringing the guys into this circle that you've created, it helps them talk about things that, and as you say, they're not giving advice. They're just saying, "Yeah, I've experienced that as well." And there's no better feeling than helping somebody else out. So even for the hard-ass guys who look at a men's circle as going, "Oh, that if I go to that, I'm weak," or something's wrong with me. It's actually, if they can learn, these guys can come in and start to open up. It might help one of their hard-ass mates as well, by coming forward. Because if we can, particularly people like yourself, myself, people that I speak to on the podcast, we always come to this line: if we can help just one person overcome something in their life, then we're doing pretty good. We're kind of achieving our goals of what we set out and why we're doing this type of work. So I love that notion of communication that you touch on. Now I'm a big fan of values as well, and you've got strong men of values. So I'd love to hear what this is about, because when I've been doing some of my clinical social work stuff, the thing that I talk about with most guys, and it comes from acceptance commitment therapy, is values and committing to action from a values perspective. And this is something that a lot of guys, we don't think about. We don't talk about what's my core values, what gets me out of bed, what drives me every day. We kind of go on in life on autopilot. We just live life. This is what's happening now. I'm going to work. I'm getting this job promotion. I'm having kids now. All of a sudden I'm retired. All of a sudden I'm on my deathbed type stuff. And we've just gone through life on autopilot. But I think values is a really interesting thing. So I'm keen to hear about your perspective on values and why you think men need to tune into this and how you do it?
It's great, very great thing to talk about. And I've been talking about it a lot. I guess when you mentioned it earlier, I was talking a lot about relationships. I'm talking a lot about values as well for people. And we've got some exciting things happening. We're looking at moving overseas and expanding the business and doing a whole heap of cool stuff. And people ask, "Oh, aren't you worried about leaving this behind and that behind?" And for me, one thing I learned 6 years ago, because, even the Man That Can project, for example, I may not be doing this in 10 years time. I don't know. I'm not attached to being the guy behind the Man That Can project anymore, because I've experienced that when I was the rugby guy.
Yeah.
So what I'm now attached to is the values that drive everything that I do. And if I don't feel those values being met, or if, for example, I will become a dad one day, hopefully, and my values may change based on priorities and things that are going on in my life. But for the moment, some things that are driving me, and I'll share how I came to this and how I've actioned this and fulfill this, is health has always been the number one value. There was a long period of time where I was neglecting that. I thought, if I prioritize health, I'm like a bodybuilder, and I don't like bodybuilding. Like, that's just a personal thing. Not that I have anything against bodybuilding. It's just not how I wanted to be perceived or how I want to perceive myself. But then I was like, why? I love health. I love training. I love looking after my diet. I love having energy, good vitality. I fucking love it. So that's something that I'll never stop prioritizing for as long as I live, because I know the healthier I feel, the more energy I have, the more I get out there and give my best self. It's going to make me better across the board, 100%. The second one is freedom. And what freedom looks like for me is choice and flexibility.
Yeah.
So how I gain choice and flexibility is I run my own company. I run a company that's 75% of my income's generated online, right? Which gives me choice to work from where I want, when I want, like the hours are flexible, and how I want, with who I want.
Yeah.
Right. And then also that flexibility, when I always have, for the last 8 years, I've always been like, if I become a parent, I want to be able to have the flexibility and time to actually be a parent, be a present parent. So it helps me generate the financial security that I need. So those two, in every decision that I make, it's why I don't have a bricks and mortar business. I am affiliated with some places, but it's not my outlay.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is connection, right? So people come and go in life. There's so many people who are holding on to high school relationships or primary school relationships with people that are just toxic. They're not the right fit for them anymore, but they don't want to let them go. This is my oldest friend. So, okay, but you're not creating space for the people that are going to allow you to get where you want in your life. So for me, once again, I have some dear, great old friends, but I've also let go a lot of people because I understand I actually want connection. I want relationships that challenge me, they empower me, and I know they're going to be there when I need them. Yeah. So that's the most important thing for me. And then adventure. My life is full of adventure. Like, I'm always doing fun stuff because it's a choice and it's something. And I know whenever I start feeling my mood shift, if I start feeling sad or flat or uninspired, it's because I'm neglecting. Generally, it's adventure that gets neglected.
Yeah.
So every day I ask myself, health, tick, I've got a game plan, which is out in the office, not in the office, on the kitchen bench. And I tick these things off daily. What am I doing today to make sure this value is being met? Wonderful. So it's not attached to the Man That Can project. It's not attached to a certain group of friends. I do everything I can to maximize what I have now, but I'm also know that in 10 years time, could be doing something completely different. But as long as those are being met, I'm going to feel just as happy as I feel now.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you've got that, you tick it off every day and you consciously look at it, because it's not something that we often do. A lot of us don't do. And you're right, the values do change over time. So the values that we held when we were younger, teenagers, young adults, when I became a dad, values tweaked as well. But they're different in different contexts. So when I'm at work, or when I'm doing the podcast, or my mindful men stuff, and in my social circles as well, different values come into play. And but it's consciously identifying them first, and then living by them, doing actions that kind of tick them off every day. And that's the great stuff. I love hearing what you're doing with men. So when you present the idea of identifying your men's values and so forth, how do the guys that come into your program, how do they receive that, and what do they say?
To be honest, I'm very, very fortunate. I don't know whether it's because I'm so active on social media and we have a application process, and obviously the podcast, but by the time most people get into the program, everyone's open to it because they're at a point, one, where they're just they're desperate for change. So they'll do anything.
Yeah.
Or two, they've been listening for long enough to understand that it works and understand that I'm not some weird dude like wanting to see UFOs or, you know, not saying that's a bad thing, but like just I'm relatable to them.
Yeah.
So because I feel it could be because I'm so active on social media that when I do present this idea and can help them understand why it's important, because most of us have it anyway. There's people that you spend time with that you gel with, and you may have just met them. And there's also people that you spend time with that you're like, man, they just took 10 years off my life. There are functions, events, and experiences that you have that you go, wow, that time flew and I just want to do more of that. Equally as much, there are functions, events, and experiences that you go, I don't want to go there again. And if you understand what your values are, you can go, that was ticking, you know, I had great connection at that. That was a health, you know, for me, if people want to hang out with me, Simon, we don't go get on the piss. Don't get me wrong. I love having a beer, but more often than not, we're going surfing, we're going on a hike, we're doing something fun outdoors because ticks my health box, ticks my connection box, ticks my freedom. It's a choice. I'm making my choices. I'm not going for beers with people just to catch up. That's their choice.
Yeah.
I am who I am, and I live through my values. It helps me make better decisions. It helps me be more certain around who I am as an individual. And there is nothing more fucking powerful than understanding who you are and what you want. Because when you know that, you don't have to go, oh, should I go? Should you just say it's a yes or a no?
Yeah.
Move on to the next thing. Like live life. And we all watch people in life. There's people who are so certain in what they're doing. And you go, wow, that person's incredible. They just seem to have so much time. They just know what they want. I guarantee you they have spent time working on their values and understanding where that plays out in their life and where it doesn't. And for anyone who's feeling lost in their life or feeling unfulfilled or disconnected, whatever word that floats your boat, start thinking about what you value, right? And you can break that down by going, okay, well, what do I enjoy doing?
Yeah.
Just write a list, spend 10 minutes, put on Enya or put on whatever music you want to listen to, and then go through and go, okay, what do I like specifically about them? What does that give me? It might be health. It might be connection. It might be love. It might be happiness. Cool. Happiness is a value. What else do we have? What else do we have? And get 4 to 6, whatever works. I use 4, as I mentioned before. And then it's going, okay, well, where else can I make sure that they get fulfilled every day? And in order of priority, which one is the most important to you, and sort of go that way, because health, if I were to put that fourth, I wouldn't be able to connect as well. I wouldn't be able to adventure as well. And I wouldn't have the energy and vitality to, you know, be a husband, to run a business, to do all of these sorts of things.
Yeah. And I guess the good starting point for anyone looking at values-based work is first identifying them and then doing some stuff around ticking those off every day. But I think the great thing from there is applying them to goals, to whether or not starting a business or changing a job, changing relationships, changing your inner circle as well, dropping some of those primary school friends that are toxic and replacing them with new people who can help you towards these goals. And that's why I love values-based work, particularly. And it sounds like you're getting some great results as well. And it makes me feel warm because I love values-based work. So I love that you're doing it as well.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of blokes, like a lot of people feel overwhelmed and we do feel lost. It's one of the most common things. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Partners of law firms and CEOs that are part of our community, once again, are at a point where they're like, I just want to find some meaning in what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are some big decisions for those people. And if you're not in that position and you don't have that much, responsibility, you know, the younger we are, generally, we don't have mortgages, we don't have children, we aren't in leadership positions generally. Okay, which is awesome if you're already listening to podcasts like this and you're in the opportunity to start going, okay, well, let me start figuring out what I do value and how I can build a life around that.
Yeah.
I did a 10-year vision with a coach in 2015. So much of it's come true. And there's also been so much of it that I realized I didn't want. I still pursued it for a little bit, but I didn't want. And the older we get, the harder that, the more challenging, I would say more challenging it becomes, as I mentioned, because you do have more responsibility. So you've got to take into account children, livelihoods, all of that sort of stuff. But it's still possible.
Yeah.
Are these guys who are in these, 50, 60 and they're going, yeah, but, I've got, this is my identity or this is my income. It's like, all right, We've established that, but you've got a choice to make. You either continue on how you wanted to, or how you're currently living your life, and you know how you're going to feel, or you can change it. They're your they're your two options. There's nothing I can say or do that's going to give you a magic third option. It's not possible.
Yeah.
And that's where, once again, when we start becoming more certain around who we are, what we want from our life, it makes it so much easier to make these decisions. The decisions are the things that are holding so many people back. They don't commit to anything. They don't want to make the decision in case it's the wrong one. The fear of loss, the fear of judgment, the fear of criticism. And it's like, look, that's always going to be there.
Yeah.
But looking back, do you want to try something new? What do you need to get in place to make that decision a little bit easier? Or you just accept that you're going to carry on doing what you're doing and make the best of that. Both are fine, whatever works for you. It doesn't affect me personally, but they're the decisions that you've got in front of you.
Definitely. So what's some advice that you can give for someone who might be feeling a bit lost or looking for that bit of extra, oomph to get their life into play, and they've looked at your website or they're looking at your socials and they want to get in touch, but they're a bit hesitant to press that call or email button? What would you be something that you could say to them to get them over the line today and give you a call?
Oh, mate, there's no wow factor I've got. I'm pretty basic, but I would just say, hit the button. Like, at the end of the day, if you're wanting to take responsibility for your life, it comes through action.
Yeah.
Every action you take will give you feedback. That feedback will then be able to be used to make a better decision moving forward. That's what I've done my whole life. When I failed at footy, I made a decision to move back. I made the decisions to get on the drugs and all that sort of fun stuff, which put me in a bad position, made some bad decisions. And then I made the decision to start working to improve my life, which has got me to where I am now. Had I sat back and just had a sook, which I did sook a lot about the position. I blamed everyone else for why I was where I was, but that didn't help me.
Mm-hmm.
So make the decision. All you're going to get on the other end is an email back or a phone call. And then you make decision with the information that you're gaining. Ask questions, get curious, and move forward. It's either going to be for you or it's not. And it's all about timing. You might be better suited for reading a book or listening to more podcasts first. That's completely okay.
Yeah.
But the main thing is just take that responsibility and take action.
Wonderful. So how can people get in touch? Like, where you got the website, and I'll put the links to your website and your socials in the show notes. But is that the best place to get you, or have you got other means for people to get in touch?
No, the website's the easiest because there's all the application links and all of that sort of stuff. Otherwise, just drop me a DM on Instagram.
Wonderful. Awesome. I've really enjoyed our chat today, Lachie. You're inspiring both on the socials, but also in the podcast. I love listening to your podcast too. But I'd like to throw it over to you for something that you'd love to plug, for maybe a resource or another podcast or something to watch or read for anyone listening who might be interested in value stuff or just getting the best out of themselves.
Let me choose a book. I think a really good book for a lot of people at the beginning is Atomic Habits, if you haven't read it, or any of the Ryan Holiday stuff. Ego is the enemy, obstacle is a way, courage is calling. Like, I think for me, it's just be curious about different things. Like, if you're wanting to learn about relationships, read, like, Google best relationship book. If you're wanting to learn finances, and just start learning, because what you'll start to notice, all of the areas, they're saying the same fundamental principles, just in different contexts. And when you can start understanding that, it becomes less overwhelming, and you go, oh, if I want to improve this, this is the process. If I want to improve this, it's the same process. And you'll start to realize that. But I think the more information in different areas that you can gather, it's going to have a huge impact on your life. And just keep listening to podcasts. I think, I listen to so many podcasts and audiobooks, and some of them I resonate with and go, that was incredible. Some of them I don't, and that's completely fine as well.
Yeah. And it's so easy to do. Like, you can do that in the car on the way to work. It might be one less Netflix show a week or whatever. It is really like doing your gardening, put it on the headphones as you're mowing the lawn or whatever. It is really easy, particularly audio books and audio content, because you can just do that on the go. So, but anyway, I'll let you get back to your Saturday morning, and appreciate your time, and you're in recovery mode at the moment. So thanks so much
to go row again.
Thanks so much for your time this morning, and I really do appreciate it. And I'd love to catch up in the future and see how things are going.
Thanks so much, Simon, and appreciate all the great work that you're doing, mate.
Cheers, mate. Thank you so much. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode, and I hope you got some value from it. If anything triggered your mental health today, please reach out to your support networks. Also, if you loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your mates. For more from Mindful Men, you can check us out on Instagram and YouTube, and I'll throw the links to these pages in the show notes below. But until next time, stay mindful.